The stagecoach rattled to a sickening halt with the sound of splintering wood and the panicked whinnying of horses, leaving a cloud of dust that hung in the hot Texas air like a shroud. Clara Wilson clutched her swollen belly, her knuckles white against the worn leather seat as the driver's curse rang out across the barren landscape. It was June 1875, and she was stranded miles from Pecos, Texas, with nothing but desert scrub stretching endlessly in all directions and a baby that wasn't due for another month, but seemed increasingly determined to make an early appearance. "Madam, I'm afraid we've got ourselves a situation," the driver, a weathered man named Hank, announced grimly after inspecting the damage. "Axles broke clean through and we're still a good 15 miles from town." Clara nodded, struggling to keep her composure as another wave of discomfort washed over her. Widowed just 3 months prior when her husband's mining accident left her alone and with child, she had been traveling to Pecos to live with her aunt, her only remaining family. "How long until help comes?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly as she adjusted her position on the uncomfortable seat. Hank exchanged glances with the shotgun rider. "Nearest ranch is 10 miles back. Next coach ain't due through until tomorrow mornin', madam." The only other passenger, an elderly businessman heading to El Paso, shook his head. "This is most unfortunate. I have an important meeting tomorrow afternoon." Clara said nothing, but felt the first hot tears spill down her cheeks as the reality of their situation became clear. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and despite the early June date, the temperature was climbing steadily. Her throat was parched, and the water in her canteen would not last the night if they remained stranded. As the hours crept by with excruciating slowness, Clara's discomfort grew. The men had fashioned a makeshift shelter using the tarp that had covered their luggage, but the heat remained oppressive. By sunset, Clara could no longer hide her distress as intermittent pain gripped her abdomen. "Madam, you all right?" Hank asked, concern etched on his sun-leathered face. I think the baby might be coming," she whispered, terror evident in her voice. It was at that moment that they heard the distant sound of hoofbeats approaching from the west. A lone rider appeared on the horizon, silhouetted against the crimson sunset. As he drew closer, Clara could make out a tall figure on a magnificent Palomino stallion. The man's broad-brimmed hat shielded his face, but his straight-backed posture spoke of confidence and strength. "Hello, the coach," the rider called out, his voice carrying easily across the still evening air. "Seems like you folks might be in need of some assistance." Hank stepped forward. "Axles broke, and we've got a lady in a delicate condition." The rider dismounted in one fluid motion and approached the shelter where Clara sat. He removed his hat, revealing piercing blue eyes set in a handsome, if dusty, face. He appeared to be in his early 30s, with sandy brown hair and a neatly trimmed beard. "Preston Lane, madam." He introduced himself with a slight tip of his head. "Ranch hand from the Triple R, about 8 miles west of here." "Clara Wilson," she replied, her voice strained as another pain gripped her. She couldn't help the soft sob that escaped her lips. Preston's eyes narrowed with concern, taking in her condition with a glance. "How far along are you, Mrs. Wilson?" 8 months, she managed. "But something's wrong. The pains shouldn't be this strong yet." Preston turned to Hank. "How long until help arrives?" "Not until tomorrow at best," Hank admitted grimly. Preston nodded once, decision made. He turned back to Clara. "Mrs. Wilson, you need a doctor, and you need one quick. Pecos is the closest town with a proper physician." "But how?" Clara began, then gasped as another contraction seized her. "My horse," Preston said simply. "He's strong and sure-footed. He'll get you to Pecos." The elderly businessman frowned. "And what of us? How will you get to town?" Preston's gaze never left Clara's face. "I'll stay with the coach. Mrs. Wilson's need is greater." Clara shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I can't take your only horse. You'll be stranded out here." "Better me than you, madam," Preston replied softly. "I know this country. I can make do." He hesitated before adding, "I lost my sister and her baby 2 years ago because she couldn't get to a doctor in time. I won't let that happen to another woman if I can help it." His words hung in the air between them, and Clara saw the pain flash across his features before he masked it with determination. "Can you ride?" he asked. "Yes," Clara answered. "My father raised horses in Missouri, but in my condition." "I'll fix the saddle to make it as comfortable as possible," Preston promised. "And dancers gentle as they come." As the last light faded from the sky, Preston worked quickly, adjusting his saddle and fashioning a makeshift pad from his bedroll. Clara watched him, noting the efficiency of his movements and the kindness in his eyes whenever he glanced her way. When everything was ready, Preston helped Clara to her feet. "The road to Pico's is straight as an arrow from here," he explained. "Just keep the North Star at your back, and you'll make it by morning if you pace Dancer well." Clara nodded, but her legs trembled beneath her, and another pain made her double over. "Mrs. Wilson," Preston caught her before she could fall. "I don't think I can make it alone," she admitted, fear making her voice shake. Preston's jaw tightened as he made a quick decision. "Then I'm coming with you. But no arguments, madam. I'll ride behind you and make sure you both get to that doctor safely." Hank stepped forward. "Mr. Lane, that's mighty decent of you. We'll make our way on foot come morning light." Within minutes, Preston had helped Clara onto Dancer, then swung up behind her. His strong arms reached around her to hold the reins, creating a secure cradle that made her feel safer than she had in months. "Hold on, Mrs. Wilson," he murmured close to her ear. "We'll take it slow and steady." As they set off into the darkness, Clara leaned back against Preston's solid chest, drawing strength from his unwavering presence. The night was clear, a blanket of stars spreading across the vast Texas sky, and the moon cast enough light to illuminate their path. "Thank you," Clara whispered as they rode. "Your kindness is a miracle I hadn't dared pray for." "No need for thanks, madam," Preston replied, his voice a comforting rumble against her back. "Any decent man would do the same." "Not any man would give up his only horse to a stranger," Clara countered softly. Preston was silent for a moment. "My pa taught me that a man's measured by how he treats those who can't help themselves." They rode in silence for a while, Preston carefully guiding Dancer around the rougher patches of ground. Clara tried to focus on the rhythm of the horse's gait, rather than the increasingly frequent contractions that seized her body. "Tell me about yourself, Mr. Lane," she said eventually, needing the distraction. "How did you come to be riding alone in this part of the country?" Preston adjusted his grip on the reins. "Been working at the Triple R for about 5 years now. Owner's a good man, treats his hands fair. I was heading back from delivering a message to a neighboring ranch when I spotted your coach. And before that, fought for the Confederacy, though I had little love for their cause. Was just a boy who thought he was doing his duty," he added, a hint of regret in his voice. "After the war, I drifted west like many others, tried my hand at prospecting in Colorado but found I preferred horses to pickaxes." Clara nodded, understanding. "My late husband was a miner. It's a hard life." "I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Wilson," Preston said gently. "Thank you. It's been difficult, but I'm trying to be strong for the baby's sake." She winced as another contraction came, stronger than the last. Preston felt her tension. "We need to rest for a bit," he decided, guiding Dancer toward a small outcropping of rocks that offered some shelter. "Let me check our progress." He helped Clara dismount carefully, supporting most of her weight as she struggled to stand. The pain was coming more regularly now, and Clara feared the baby wouldn't wait until they reached Pico's. Preston led her to a flat rock and helped her sit. "I'm going to water Dancer and check our bearings," he explained. "Will you be all right for a moment?" Clara nodded, trying to mask her discomfort. As Preston moved away, she closed her eyes and took deep breaths, one hand cradling her belly. She was so focused on controlling her pain that she didn't notice Preston's return until he knelt beside her, offering his canteen. "Small sips," he advised. "We've made good progress. About halfway to town by my reckoning." Clara drank gratefully, then met his concerned gaze. "Mr. Lane, I don't think we'll make it to Pico's before the baby comes." Preston's expression remained calm, though Clara detected a flicker of alarm in his eyes. "How often are the pains coming?" "Every few minutes now," she admitted, "and my waters broke during the ride." Preston ran a hand through his hair, thinking quickly. "There's a line shack about 3 miles from here. It's basic, but it's shelter with a roof and walls. Might have some supplies, too." "Is it safe?" "Safer than having your baby under the stars, Mrs. Wilson." Clara managed a weak smile. "I think, under the circumstances, you should call me Clara." Preston returned her smile, a brief softening of his weathered features. "Clara, then, and I'm Preston." He helped her back onto Dancer, and they set off at a careful pace. Clara leaned more heavily against Preston now, the contractions becoming increasingly difficult to bear in silence. Preston spoke quietly, telling her stories of ranch life to distract her, his deep voice a soothing anchor in her sea of pain. The line shack appeared just as Clara felt she couldn't go on much longer, a small, weathered structure nestled against a rocky hillside. Preston helped her inside while she bit back a cry as another contraction seized her. The interior was sparse but clean enough. A narrow cot, a rough wooden table with a single chair, a small stove, and shelves containing basic supplies. Preston worked quickly, lighting the lamp he found and kindling a small fire in the stove. "Let's get you comfortable," he said, helping Clara to the cot. He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the situation yet determined to help. "I'm no midwife, but my ma had 5 children after me, and I helped with the last 2 when no one else was around." Clara nodded gratefully, too focused on her breathing to speak. Preston found a bucket and stepped outside, returning moments later with water from the nearby stream. He placed it on the stove to warm, then searched the shelves for anything useful. "There's some clean-looking cloths here," he reported, "and some whiskey. Not much else of use." As the night deepened, Clara's labor progressed. Preston proved to be a steady, if awkward, birth attendant. He kept his eyes averted as much as possible out of respect for her modesty, but his hands were sure and gentle when needed. "You're doing real well, Clara," he encouraged as she gripped the edge of the cot, her knuckles white. "From what I can tell, everything's proceeding normally." "It hurts so much more than I expected," she gasped. Preston wiped her brow with a damp cloth. "My ma used to say that the pain is God's way of preparing mothers for the lifetime of worry that comes with having children." Despite her discomfort, Clara smiled. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She was," Preston agreed, a shadow passing over his face as dawn approached. Clara's pains reached their peak. "Preston," she panted, "I think it's time." Preston nodded, positioning himself at the foot of the cot. His face was a mask of concentration as he guided her through the final stages of labor. "I can see the head," he announced, his voice steady despite the extraordinary circumstances. "One more big push, Clara." With a cry that seemed torn from her very soul, Clara pushed, and moments later the sharp wail of a newborn filled the small shack. Preston's hands, those same hands that had broken wild horses and survived the harshness of frontier life, now cradled the tiny, slippery form of Clara's child with unexpected tenderness. "You have a son, Clara," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "A strong, healthy boy." Tears streamed down Clara's face as Preston carefully placed the swaddled infant in her arms. The baby's face was red and wrinkled, his tiny fists balled tightly as he squirmed against her chest. "Hello, little one," she whispered, her heart expanding with a love so fierce it took her breath away. "You certainly were in a hurry to join us." Preston busied himself with cleaning up, giving Clara privacy to nurse her son for the first time. When he returned to her side, his expression was soft with wonder. "What will you name him?" he asked. Clara looked down at her son, then up at the man who had sacrificed so much to ensure their safety. "I think I'll call him Preston," she said softly, "after the man who saved his life, Preston James Wilson." Preston's eyes widened, and for a moment Clara thought he might refuse the honor. Then he smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his face. "That's a mighty fine name for a boy born in a lined shack in the middle of nowhere." They remained at the shack until midday, allowing Clara to rest and regain some strength. Preston cared for both mother and child with surprising skill, heating water for washing, preparing a simple broth from supplies he found, and even fashioning a makeshift cradle from a wooden box lined with his own shirt. "We should reach Pico's by nightfall if we take it slow," Preston said as he helped Clara onto Dancer once more. This time, he handed baby Preston up to her before mounting behind them both. "The doctor should check you both over, just to be safe." The journey to Pico's was slower than their nighttime ride had been, but the warmth of her son against her chest and Preston's steady presence at her back made Clara feel safer than she had since her husband's death. They talked easily now, the shared experience of the birth having forged a connection that transcended their brief acquaintance. "My aunt doesn't know I'm coming," Clara admitted as the outline of Pico's appeared on the horizon. "My last letter to her was returned unopened. I'm hoping she still lives there, but if she doesn't, we'll figure something out," Preston assured her. "Pico's is a growing town. There'll be opportunities for a determined woman like yourself." Clara glanced back at him. "And what about you? Will you return to the Triple R?" Preston was quiet for a moment. "I reckon I should report back, let them know why I'm delayed, but I'd like to make sure you and little Preston are settled first." The town of Pico's welcomed them with the bustle of early evening activity. The Stagecoach office was their first stop, where Preston reported the broken-down coach and its stranded passengers. The station manager immediately dispatched a rescue wagon, thanking Preston for his assistance. Dr. Samuel Thorne, Pico's only physician, pronounced both Clara and baby Preston to be in remarkable health given the circumstances of the birth. "You did well, Mr. Lane," he told Preston, who had waited anxiously outside the examination room. "Many men would have panicked in your situation." With the doctor's visit complete, their next task was to locate Clara's aunt. The address she had led them to a small house on the edge of town, its garden neat but the windows dark. "She's not here," Clara said, disappointment evident in her voice as they knocked for the third time without response. A neighbor emerged from the house next door, a plump woman with a kindly face. "You looking for Martha Jenkins?" she asked, eyeing them curiously. "Yes, she's my aunt," Clara explained. "I'm Clara Wilson, her sister's daughter." The woman's expression softened with sympathy. "Oh, honey, I'm sorry to tell you this, but Martha passed on last winter. The influenza took her and several others in town." Clara swayed slightly, and Preston's hand immediately went to her elbow to steady her. "I see," she said faintly. "I didn't know." "The house is still empty," the woman offered. "Martha had no children of her own." There was talk of distant family back east who might inherit, but no one's come to claim it. Preston thanked the woman for the information, then guided Clara and the baby to the town's only hotel. "You'll stay here tonight," he insisted, paying for the room despite Clara's protests. "Tomorrow we can sort out what comes next." The following morning, Preston arrived at Clara's hotel room with news. He had spoken with the town's lawyer, who confirmed that Martha Jenkins' estate was indeed in limbo. "As her closest living relative, you have a strong claim to the property," Preston explained as they shared breakfast in the hotel dining room. "Mr. Blackman thinks it could be settled within a few weeks, especially given your situation." Clara's eyes widened. "You mean I might inherit Aunt Martha's house?" "It seems likely," Preston nodded. "It's not much, but it would give you and the little one a roof over your heads." Clara glanced down at her son, sleeping peacefully in her arms. "It would be more than I dared hope for." Preston cleared his throat. "I spoke to Sheriff Miller this morning, too. There's work available in town, the school needs a teacher come fall, and the mercantile is looking for help now." "You've been busy," Clara said, touched by his continued assistance. Preston looked slightly embarrassed. "Just trying to help get you settled. I should be heading back to the R tomorrow." "Oh," Clara tried to hide her disappointment. In the short time she had known Preston, she had come to rely on his steady presence and practical kindness. The thought of facing her new life in Pecos without him was unexpectedly painful. "Unless—" Preston began, then hesitated. "Unless what?" Clara prompted. "Unless you'd like me to stay a bit longer, help you get settled in your aunt's place if the lawyer works things out." His eyes met hers briefly before dropping to his coffee cup. "The ranch will manage without me for a while." Clara's heart lifted. "I would appreciate that very much, Preston." Over the next 2 weeks, Preston became Clara's staunch ally in establishing her new life in Pecos. As predicted, the lawyer had little difficulty confirming Clara's claim to her aunt's property, and by the end of the first week, she and baby Preston were installed in the small but comfortable house. Preston stayed in a room above the livery stable, but spent his days helping Clara make the house her own. He repaired the sagging front porch, patched the roof, and even planted a vegetable garden in the backyard. "You don't have to do all this," Clara protested as Preston installed a new pump at the kitchen sink. "I know," he replied simply. "I want to." As they worked side by side, they shared stories of their lives before chance brought them together on that dusty road outside Pecos. Clara told him about her childhood in Missouri, her brief marriage to James Wilson, and her hopes for her son's future. Preston spoke of his time during and after the war, his wandering years, and his gradual settling into ranch life. "I never thought I'd stay in one place for long," he admitted one evening as they sat on the newly repaired porch, watching the sunset paint the western sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Baby Preston slept in a cradle nearby, his tiny chest rising and falling with each peaceful breath. "What changed?" Clara asked. Preston was silent for a long moment. "Found that a man needs roots eventually, a purpose beyond just surviving another day." His words resonated with Clara, who had been seeking exactly that since James's death. "And did you find that purpose at the R?" Preston's gaze moved from the sunset to her face. "I thought I had," he said quietly. "Now I'm not so certain." The weeks stretched into a month, and Preston still hadn't returned to the ranch. He had sent word explaining his absence, and had received the foreman's grudging approval to extend his stay in Pecos. Clara had secured a position at the mercantile, working 3 days a week, while a neighbor's teenage daughter watched baby Preston. Their routine developed naturally. Preston would walk Clara to work in the mornings, spend his day on projects around town. The sheriff had discovered his handyman abilities and kept him busy with repairs to public buildings. And meet Clara after her shift to walk her home. Evenings were spent on the porch or in the cozy kitchen, talking and planning for the changes baby Preston's growth would require. It was during one such evening, as they sat at the kitchen table shelling peas from Preston's garden, that Clara realized something had fundamentally shifted between them. The comfortable silence they shared was no longer that of new friends, but of two people who had begun to rely on each other in ways neither had anticipated. "Preston," she said hesitantly, "don't you think it's time you returned to the Triple R?" His hand stilled over the pile of pea pods. "Are you asking me to leave, Clara?" "No." The word burst from her before she could moderate her tone. More calmly, she added, "No, that's not what I meant. I just don't want you to lose your position because of us." Preston's expression softened. "The Triple R will still be there if I choose to go back." "If," Clara repeated, her heart suddenly racing. Preston pushed aside the bowl of peas and reached across the table to take her hand. "Clara, I've been thinking a lot about my future lately, about what I want from life." Clara held her breath, afraid to hope for what his words might mean. "When I found you on that stagecoach, I was just doing what any decent man would do," he continued. "But these past weeks—" He paused, searching for the right words. "These past weeks have shown me what I've been missing all these years of drifting and working other men's land." "What's that?" Clara whispered. "A home," Preston said simply. "Not just a place to lay my head, but a true home, with people who matter." His thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand. "People I've come to care for very deeply." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. "We care for you too," she said softly. "Preston has been smiling more lately, and I think it's because he knows your voice." Preston chuckled. "He's a fine boy. Going to be a strong man someday." "Thanks to you," Clara said. "If you hadn't found us that day—" "But I did," Preston interrupted gently. "And now I find myself wondering if it wasn't just chance that brought me down that road at that particular moment." "What do you mean?" Preston took a deep breath. "Clara, I know it hasn't been long since you lost your husband, and I know this might seem sudden or improper, but I've never been one to hold back when I know what I want." He squeezed her hand. "I'm falling in love with you, Clara Wilson, with you and that little boy. And if you think you might someday feel the same way about a weathered cowboy like me, I'd like to stay in Pecos and see where this leads us." Clara's free hand flew to her mouth as tears spilled over her lashes. For a terrible moment, Preston thought he had misjudged the situation entirely. "I'm sorry," he began, starting to withdraw his hand. "I've spoken out of turn." Clara grasped his hand tightly, preventing his retreat. "No, Preston, don't apologize. I'm crying because I've been so afraid to admit my own feelings." She wiped at her tears with her free hand. "It seems disloyal to James's memory to have found happiness so soon after his passing." "What would James want for you and his son?" Preston asked gently. Clara considered this. "He would want us to be safe and cared for, to be happy." "And are you? Happy, I mean?" A smile broke through her tears. "Yes. When you're here, I'm happier than I ever expected to be again." Preston stood, drawing Clara to her feet and into his arms. The embrace was tentative at first, then strengthening as Clara leaned into his solid warmth. "I don't expect anything right away," Preston murmured against her hair. "We can take this as slow as you need." Clara looked up at him, her heart full. "I think life has already shown us that sometimes the most beautiful things happen when we least expect them." Their first kiss was gentle, a promise of deeper feelings yet to be explored. When they parted, Preston rested his forehead against hers. "I should find a proper place to stay in town," he said. "People will talk if I keep spending so much time here." Clara laughed softly. "They're already talking, Preston. Mrs. Donnelly at the Mercantile has been hinting about your intentions for weeks now. The following Sunday, Preston escorted Clara and baby Preston to church, making their courtship official in the eyes of the town. The citizens of Pecos had already embraced Clara as one of their own, and most approved of the match, seeing in Preston a hard-working, honorable man who had proven his character through his actions. Summer faded into fall, and as the cottonwoods along the Pecos River turned golden, Preston surprised Clara with an offer that would change their lives once more. "I've been saving my wages for years," he explained one crisp October evening as they walked along the riverbank, baby Preston bundled warmly against Clara's chest. "Never had much reason to spend it, living at the ranch. I've put in an offer on the Simmons place." Clara stopped walking. "The cattle ranch north of town. But it's nearly 500 acres," Preston nodded, looking both nervous and pleased. "Old man Simmons is moving to San Antonio to live with his daughter. He accepted my offer yesterday. It's not the biggest spread, but it's good land with a decent house and a small herd to start with." "Preston, that's wonderful," Clara exclaimed. "Your own ranch, it's what you've worked for all these years." "Our own ranch," Preston corrected softly. "If you'll have me, that is." Clara's eyes widened as Preston reached into his pocket and withdrew a small ring, its single diamond catching the late afternoon sunlight. "Clara Wilson," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion Clara could see in his eyes. "I know we've only known each other for a short time, but in that time you've become the center of my world. You and this little one." He gently touched baby Preston's cheek. "I want to be a husband to you and a father to him. Will you marry me and make a family together on our own land?" Clara didn't hesitate. "Yes, Preston. Yes, with all my heart." They were married 2 weeks later in the Pecos church, with baby Preston cradled in the arms of Mrs. Donnelly from the Mercantile. The entire town turned out for the ceremony and the celebration that followed. Even the driver and shotgun rider from the broken-down Stagecoach returned for the occasion, marveling at how their misfortune had led to such a joyful outcome. "Never seen a breakdown lead to a wedding before," Hank commented as he shook Preston's hand at the reception. "But I can't say I'm surprised. The way you looked at her even then, covered in dust and scared as she was, I had a feeling you might not be going back to that ranch of yours." Life at the Lane Ranch quickly established its own rhythm. The house was larger than Clara's aunt's place in town, with 3 bedrooms and a spacious kitchen that became the heart of their home. Preston proved to be a natural rancher, his years of experience working for others now serving him well as he built up their own herd. Clara thrived as a rancher's wife, managing the household, keeping a large vegetable garden, and even learning to assist with the cattle when extra hands were needed. Baby Preston grew stronger each day, his personality emerging as a blend of his mother's gentleness and his adoptive father's determination. Preston legally adopted the boy on his first birthday, a day marked with a celebration that brought together their new friends from the surrounding ranches and town. As Clara watched Preston swinging his son in the air, the child's delighted giggles ringing across the yard, she marveled at how completely her life had transformed in just over a year. "He's the spitting image of you," remarked one of their neighbors, clearly not realizing that Preston wasn't the boy's biological father. Preston just smiled, catching Clara's eye across the gathering. Neither felt any need to correct the assumption. In all the ways that mattered, Preston was the boy's true father, and the bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. Winter came early that year, bringing with it heavy snows that isolated the ranch for weeks at a time. Far from being a hardship, these quiet days became some of Clara's fondest memories, Preston teaching young Preston to walk. evenings spent reading by the fire, and nights wrapped in each other's arms as the wind howled outside their snug bedroom. It was during one such snowbound evening, as they sat before the hearth watching young Preston stack wooden blocks, that Clara shared her news with Preston. "I think our family might be growing," she said softly, placing her hand over her still flat stomach. Preston's eyes widened, then crinkled with joy as he pulled her into a gentle embrace. "Are you certain?" Clara nodded. "Dr. Thorne confirmed it yesterday when we were in town. He says the baby should arrive in early summer." Preston kissed her tenderly, then placed his large hand over hers on her stomach. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" Clara asked, leaning her head against his shoulder. "For giving me everything I never knew I wanted," Preston replied. "A home, a family, a purpose." "You gave me the same," Clara reminded him. "And more, you gave me hope when I had none." As spring thawed the land, Clara's pregnancy progressed smoothly. Young Preston, now an active toddler, seemed to understand that something important was happening. He often patted his mother's growing belly and attempted to say "baby" in his developing vocabulary. The cattle operation flourished under Preston's careful management. He had a natural instinct for breeding stock, and ranchers from as far away as Colorado began to take notice of the quality of the Lane herd. With the profits from their first year, Preston was able to hire 2 full-time hands to help with the ranch work, ensuring that Clara wouldn't be left alone when her time came. June arrived with its characteristic heat, and Clara found herself increasingly uncomfortable as she approached her due date. Preston insisted she rest more, taking on additional household duties and enlisting the cook they had hired to prepare meals that would tempt Clara's flagging appetite. "You're spoiling me," Clara protested one evening as Preston massaged her swollen feet. "Just returning the favor," he replied with a grin. "You've been spoiling me since the day you agreed to be my wife." The baby arrived on a star-filled night in late June, almost exactly 2 years after Clara and Preston's fateful meeting on the dusty road to Pico's. The birth was easier than young Preston's had been, with Dr. Thorne and a midwife in attendance this time. Preston paced anxiously outside the bedroom door until the midwife called him in to meet his daughter. "Cassandra Lane," Clara announced softly as Preston gazed in wonder at the tiny bundle in her arms. "I thought we might call her Cassie." "She's perfect," Preston whispered, gently touching the downy dark hair that covered the newborn's head. "Just like her mother." Young Preston was initially suspicious of the new arrival, but quickly assumed the role of protective big brother. His first clear sentence, uttered a week after Cassie's birth, was "my baby," as he pointed firmly at his sister's cradle. The years that followed brought both challenges and joys to the Lane family. The ranch expanded as Preston's reputation for quality cattle grew. Clara, with her organized mind and good head for figures, took over the business side of the operation, freeing Preston to focus on the practical aspects of ranching. They added a wing to the house as their family grew to include 2 more children: Benjamin, born 3 years after Cassie, and Elizabeth, who arrived 2 years later. Young Preston, no longer so young, developed into a thoughtful, responsible boy who shared his father's love of the land and his mother's kindness. On the 10th anniversary of their meeting, Preston surprised Clara with a gift: a small model stagecoach carved from wood, with a broken axle and tiny figures representing the passengers. "To remind us of our beginning," he explained as Clara turned the delicate creation in her hands, tears filling her eyes. "As if I could ever forget," she replied, leaning up to kiss him. "That broken axle was the luckiest accident of my life." "Not luck," Preston corrected gently. "Providence." That evening, after the children were asleep, Clara and Preston sat on the porch of their home, watching the stars emerge in the vast Texas sky. Preston's arm rested comfortably around Clara's shoulders, her head nestled against his chest. "Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been?" Clara asked. "If you hadn't come along that road at that exact moment." Preston considered this. "I try not to dwell on what might have been, but I do thank God every day that I chose that route home." Clara smiled, thinking of the frightened young widow she had been and the strong, confident woman she had become. "From a broken-down stagecoach to all of this," she mused. "Who would have thought it possible?" "I knew it the moment I saw you," Preston said, his voice rich with emotion even after a decade of marriage. "Something told me that helping you wasn't just the right thing to do, it was the only thing to do." Clara turned in his arms to face him. At 42, Preston was still handsome, though gray now threaded his sandy hair and lines of experience marked his face. To Clara, he was more attractive than ever, his features reflecting the good man he had always been. "I love you, Preston Lane," she said simply. "More than I ever thought possible." "And I love you, Clara Lane," he replied, leaning down to kiss her beneath the Texas stars. "Forever and always." Inside the house, their 4 children slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that they were loved. Outside, the vast expanse of the Lane Ranch stretched in all directions, a testament to what could grow from an act of kindness on a dusty road when a stagecoach broke down miles from town. A pregnant woman wept, and a cowboy gave her his only horse and ultimately his heart. As the years passed, the Lane Ranch became one of the most prosperous in the region. Preston's innovative breeding techniques and Clara's sharp business sense created a legacy that would sustain their family for generations to come. Young Preston, who eventually dropped the young from his name, grew into a fine rancher who would one day take over the operation, continuing the traditions his parents had established. Cassie inherited her mother's intelligence and her father's determination, becoming the first woman from Pecos to attend college in the East before returning to Texas to teach at the school in town. Benjamin developed a talent for veterinary medicine, his gentle hands healing animals throughout the county. Elizabeth, the baby of the family, surprised everyone by becoming an accomplished artist whose paintings of Western landscapes eventually hung in galleries as far away as New York City. Through it all, Clara and Preston remained the steady center around which the family revolved. Their love, born in crisis and nurtured through commitment, became a legend in the community, a testament to the power of kindness, courage, and the unexpected paths that lead to happiness. And on quiet evenings, long after their children had grown and started families of their own, Clara and Preston still sat together on their porch, watching the stars emerge over the land they had built together, grateful for the broken axle that had changed the course of their lives forever.